Oren, I'm going to start with you. You have been working your sources at the Pentagon. What can you tell us about these airstrikes?
So as you said, this is the first known military strike coming from President Joe Biden. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin said as he was coming back from a trip to the West Coast that it was at his recommendation, but it was Biden that gave the final authorization earlier today for a strike, an airstrike along the Iraq-Syria border in Syria, eastern Syria, that is. The target was Iranian-backed Shia militias that were operating there. And this comes after a series of rocket strikes targeting different areas with U.S. and coalition forces in Erbil, in Balad Air Force Base just north of Baghdad, and then in the Green Zone and Baghdad itself. It was Austin who said that the sites that were targeted here were used by the same Iranian-backed Shia militias that he believes, and he is confident, launched those rocket attacks against U.S. forces. A U.S. defense official says that up to a handful of militants were killed in these strikes. They're waiting to find out more information, a battle damage assessment, but here is what Secretary Austin had to say a little earlier this evening.
We're confident that that target was being used by the same Shia militia that conducted the strikes. We allowed and encouraged the Iraqis to investigate and develop intelligence, and that was very helpful to us in refining the target.
Pentagon spokesman John Kirby says this strike was done in conjunction with and in coordination with allies in the region. Don?
Another question for you, Oren. What does this tell you about President Biden's larger military strategy when it comes to the Middle East?
Well, we know the big question for the U.S. administration, for the Biden administration and U.S. allies in the region is Iran and how to handle Iran. It's not just a question of what to do diplomatically, militarily with Iran's nuclear program. It goes beyond that. Iran's ballistic missiles, Iran's actions in the region. The focus and the key focus here is Iran. Certainly there are other questions when it comes to the Middle East, what the Biden administration will do when it comes to Yemen, when it comes to Syria. But the overarching umbrella here is Iran, and that's where the focus will be. And that's why this is so sensitive. It wasn't a large-scale, massive strike. It looks like it was a relatively small, calculated strike, one meant to make sure that Iran and its proxies in the region know there is a cost for future rocket attacks against U.S. forces, but also in response to these previous forces. Crucially, it was not meant to escalate the situation. That was not the goal of the Biden administration. That's what John Kirby said, the Pentagon spokesman. And that gives you the idea that the true approach here and the primary approach will be one of diplomacy first, military second.